Hey everybody, welcome to the Out Here Trying to Survive podcast, episode 11. Thank you so much for being here. It's a new month. A new month means a new pop filter. This month's pop filter is pink because, it's spring, pink flowers, red flowers, all of that. I am also decked out in burgundy hair, burgundy lipstick, pink nails, trying to be on theme, on brand with the new month and the new theme. This month we're going to be talking about shedding. Shedding our old self, shedding our old habits, shedding some old mindsets, shedding the need for control, and all the things that we need to shed so that we can give birth to new things, new life, so that we can spring forward into a new person. Let me introduce myself. My name is Gracesandra. I'm an activist, an author, and a mom. I'm also a mental health advocate, and I'm a multiple trauma survivor. I started this platform Out Here Trying to Survive for Black and brown women of color like me who've been through all the things and we're trying to survive and get through it. I'm really passionate about helping Black women recover from abuse and trauma and really find our way through thriving mental health and self-love. This podcast is a hope-oriented storytelling space, a warm hug of solidarity from me to you, and a celebration of our resilience thus far and our determination to not only survive but to thrive. Welcome. Over the years, y'all, I've shed so many things. Whole ass husbands, negative self-talk, anger, self-hate. My worldviews have changed wildly and more. This episode is broken up into 4 parts, all about shedding. In part 1, we're going to talk about how to shed our old self so that we can reclaim joy in our lives. In part 2, we're going to talk about what are some of the things that we can shed or need to shed that we're uncertain about. Should we quit? Should we give up? Should we just stop? Should we move on? Or should we keep pressing on? In part 3, we're going to talk about how do we shed our need for control. In part 4, we're going to talk about how do we shed our lining so that we can give birth to something even better. But first, before we do that, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Yes, our sponsor is my book, Grace Actually, Memoirs of Love, Faith, Loss, and Black Womanhood. You can get this on Amazon. You can also get it in digital copy that you can read on your Kindle on Amazon Direct. It's a really good book, actually. All right, well, let's move on to part 1, y'all. So part 1 is how do we shed our old self so that we can reclaim our joy? I think it's really important to point out that sometimes our old self is also what some people call ego. It's also sometimes what has been passed down to us, things that aren't necessarily our fault. Some of us were actually born into a large population of us who are minority women and are part of a marginalized identity. We're born into poverty. A lot of us have genetic predisposition towards alcoholism, towards depression, towards PTSD because of the trauma of our ancestors. Sometimes I think it's really important for us to know, especially as women of color, that we are carrying around things and we are feeling intense amounts of shame for how we haven't been yet to shed that part of our old self, but really it's something that was handed down. And I think what's really beautiful is that we can decide that we will be the ancestor that will stop some of these generational curses, and we will shed it so that the next generation doesn't have to. I remember for me, there was a time, it wasn't really all that long ago where I had a really important realization about ways that I am really struggling to thrive as an adult. Some of the adulting things that are just really hard on me. Now, I'm also extremely neurodivergent. I'm someone who has PTSD. I have complex PTSD. I also have ADHD. I also have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And all of that, basically, if you could sum it up, leads to someone who looks like has a lot of depression and anxiety issues, who has a hard time organizing my life. But that has a multitude. Those conditions have a multitude of consequences. And there's another one that I'm not even diagnosed with that I think I have. But because I'm not diagnosed, I kind of don't want to throw it out there. But I do have a very good trusted friend who's a licensed clinical psychotherapist who believes I have this other condition. And when I read it, I'm like, ooh, that tracks. So I'm dealing with a number of different conditions and struggling to thrive in some real key areas of my life. And it's ongoing, right? I'm 47 years old. So I'm out here in these streets and a mom of 3. So I'm out here in these streets really just struggling with basic adulting stuff that I see some of my peers doing just fine. They don't seem to be struggling with some of the things that I'm struggling with. And I think it was not that long ago, y'all. It was like in the last year. I was like, you know what? I really don't want to keep shaming myself for the way that I'm struggling to survive and thrive with this. Clearly, I have some deep issues that I was either born with or developed as a result of severe childhood trauma. And I don't want to shame myself because anytime I've actually seen a therapist and talked to a therapist about my issues, which I have several times, y'all. I believe in therapy. Go to therapy, y'all. Go to therapy. But anytime I have done that, most therapists have said to me, because I've had quite a few in the last 30 years. I started going to therapy when I was 18 and I'm about to be 48 later on this year. So that's 30 years of on and off therapy. Significant chunks of my life have been lived in therapy. So I'm definitely a therapy girly. But one of the things that several different therapists said to me is like, wow, I can't believe you survived. Or I'll never forget one of my therapists, her name was Dr. Angela Hershey. May she rest in peace. She's gone now. But I'll never forget one of the first times I met with her and told her like my whole life story. She had tears in her eyes, and I know therapists are not supposed to cry. They are not supposed to cry. They are not supposed to enter into your world like that. And I remember her saying, I can't believe that you survived that and that you're as normal as you are. And the truth is, when I met with Dr. Hershey, I hadn't started really breaking down yet. I think if I had met with Dr. Hershey 10, maybe 12 years later, which she didn't make it, she wasn't still alive past that, I think she would have been like, oh, okay, your breakdown was inevitable. But when she met me, I was still very much white knuckling it, like trying so hard to survive, trying so hard to be normal, trying so hard to live in this world with other people who just did not have the enormity of baggage that I had. I was also in a lot of like very toxic, very white evangelical spaces at that time because I was working in a mostly majority white Christian ministry at that time. And I was married to an evangelical white husband at that time. And so in the spaces I was in, I was not around other women of color a lot. I was sometimes, but not a lot. I wasn't around other women of color who had been through the kind of like seriously traumatic experiences that I had been through as a child that were, some of them were race related, a lot of racial trauma in my childhood as well, in addition to all the other stuff. And so there were ways that I was just trying to cope and get through life that just weren't, it just wasn't in the same. It just wasn't the same as a lot of the people I was going through. And I didn't really connect to the kind of women who I share solidarity with now, the kind of relationships that I make sure I have now, the kind of people I have around me now that I make sure are part of my community and my family, my chosen family, because I know I can't survive without other women of color around me, particularly ones who understand and have been through what I've been through, both in my childhood, that kind of trauma, but also in my adulthood. Women who've been through assaults, for example, women who've been through terrible sexual violations, women who've been through, I'm a survivor of very severe narcissistic and verbal abuse in marriage. So domestic violence, like it's really, really important for me to be around those kind of people to normalize what happens to you and how hard you have to fight to survive. I say all that to say, if you're a person who's struggling to survive in some major ways of your life, please do not look at everyone around you who's just kind of had like maybe a more normal, regular, schmegular, non-trauma filled life, because you will feel bad about yourself. And there was some time in this last year, it was one day I just had a heart to heart with myself. And I was like, hey, you have to stop feeling shame about how you're struggling with all of this. This is not all your fault. Yes, you've made some choices along the way that weren't the best choices, but this is not all your fault. Yes, you have to take accountability for your choices. Yes, you have to take accountability for where your life is. But there's generational trauma that you're dealing with, that you're facing, that you're tearing down. And you need to, instead of being ashamed of yourself, you need to be proud of yourself, because not a lot of people can go through what you've been through and not become a worse person. Not a lot of people can go through what you've been through and still be a good ass human and a loving ass human and a good ass friend and a good ass mom. And I sat down with myself and cried and lamented and journaled. And I feel like I'm getting about to get emotional now just talking about it, because I decided that shame has to fucking stop. It has to fucking stop. It has to fucking stop. There's no place for shame in healing. No place. So the first step in shedding our old self to reclaim joy again is realizing what's your fault and what do you need to take accountability for, but what's not your fault? What's not your fault? What was just given to you? For example, for me, I got daddy issues. Ooh, I got daddy issues. Daddy issues looks really different for a lot of women. But for me, I was sexualized by my dad starting when I was 3. I was a victim of sexual assault by him until I was 10. And then when I was 11, he went to prison for the crime. That changed the entire trajectory of my life. I've had issues, okay, with men, relationships, and my sexuality as a direct consequence and as a result of that. That's not to say I don't take responsibility for my choices as an adult. That's not to say that from today and moving forward and even the last 5 years that I don't stop and think to myself, well, how are these issues affecting me? How does it affect who I am in relationships, in sexual relationships, or whatever? I do all of that accountability piece, but I also recognize this has played a significant role in my life. If that hadn't have happened, my whole life would be different. And so shedding that old self for me looks like, number one, a long process of forgiving myself for what was not my fault, a long process of letting that go. My father is dead now, so I didn't have to go through a whole process of like, how can I forgive him or whatever. But I did have to, at some point, decide that I was going to let it go. And we're going to talk about that more in part 2. Another thing that we can do to shed our old self and reclaim joy is declutter. Declutter your brain, declutter your spaces, declutter your mind. Now, listen, y'all. Listen, I got to be honest with y'all. I'm still trying to declutter my apartment. We live in a 1,300 square foot apartment, okay? Me and my 3 children. And I've been working on decluttering it since last July. And I am still struggling to keep it clean. Okay. So I'm not telling you this from any sort of like, I got this figured out, y'all. Like, you just got to declutter your spaces. Like, your girl is struggling. Okay. But we have gotten rid of, since last July, I want to say something crazy like 20 garbage bags full of clothes that we've either donated or just threw away if they were in terrible condition or passed on to other people who have other kids. We dealt with it appropriately, but it's a lot. Okay. It's a lot. We have been pack rats, me and my children. But I have realized the more I've decluttered, which we still have so much to go, it's literally mind-boggling. Like, how do we still have stuff coming in? Anyway, I do know that decluttering your mind and decluttering your spaces really does have a positive effect. I've seen how it's affected my children too. So my son Reese and my son Ransom, they share a room. And Reese really likes being in the room. Ransom doesn't. But Reese will go in there and he will declutter himself. And let me tell you now, this is a child who has never really been clean. None of my kids are clean because I've never really been all that clean and tidy a person. Okay, I think literally me and my sons all 3 have ADHD. And Reese has been cleaning pretty much every day, trying to keep his space clean. And he likes being in there. And I think it's because it's the one room in the house that he has control over to keep consistently clean. And I've seen that with my room too. Decluttering spaces is something I struggle with, but I haven't struggled as much with decluttering my mind. I have done pretty good, if I do say so myself, at really evaluating all of the thoughts that come through my head. Now, I'm not saying that I don't still struggle with it, but I'm a close monitor, okay? I'm a really good hall monitor. Because sometimes when those negative, intrusive thoughts come in, I will make a decisive decision like, no, we are not. We are just not going to be mean. And it depends on when it is in the time of the month. If I'm like in that PMDD phase, like the 2 to 3 to 5-ish days out from my period, it's really, really, really difficult to get those thoughts under control. But if it's like any other time in the month, I'm like, listen, Grace, we're not finna do this. I'm not finna do this with you. You're not gonna say mean things about yourself. We're just not doing it. And I'm pretty good at evaluating. And then I'm also pretty good at when I say something like, if I say something like, God, you're so dumb. Like, really, like that, you're so stupid. I will try to flip it around right away. Like, you are not stupid. You are struggling with this area, and that does not make you stupid. So I'll try to actually go through a whole conversation with myself. And sometimes it might be out loud, but I'm mostly talking about in my head. But I really have worked very hard at decluttering these intrusive thoughts in my head. And I do feel like it's a major, major way that I have reintroduced peace into my life post abuse. For those of you who don't know, I was in a narcissistically abusive marriage with someone who is considered to be a severe verbal abuser. I read the book on verbal abuse. He does like all 15. While we were married, I was enduring, and even after we were married, all 15 forms of verbal abuse. And if you've ever experienced verbal abuse in all of its iterations, it produces the most hauntingly cruel and vicious, intrusive thoughts churning in your head all day long. It's all you can hear. It's extraordinarily traumatic, especially because you can re-traumatize yourself over and over and over again just by hearing what someone said to you over and over and over again. There were things that he said that traumatized me a whole year later just by thinking about it and not being able to get the intrusive thoughts out of my head, or they're also called looping thoughts. It was torturous. It was literally torturous. And if you've ever been through something like that, or were raised with a narcissist, or raised with someone who was extremely verbally abusive, you know that the battle to get control of your brain, it zaps, it takes so much energy. It zaps every part of you that feels goodness, every part of you that that knows what kindness is. Like the first time being out of that, where I met and started dating men who were actually kind to me and said kind stuff to me, it was a lot for me to deal with. I was just so not used to it. And so me taking the time to really shed the impacts of that has been mind-blowing, because I can't even believe that I can actually have and hold the peace that I do in my heart and mind right now, that I think I never thought I would be able to at some point. There was a point, like we divorced in 2020, it's 2024, but in 2017, 2018, 2019, I wouldn't have been able to imagine a time where my mind and my body could actually just be at peace. It's wild. It's really wild. So what's one thing in your mind that you say to yourself over and over again that you can let go of, that you can try to attempt to every day challenge, that when you hear it, when you hear yourself say it to yourself, I want you to spend some time reflecting on what you can offload. It's worth it. It's completely and utterly worth it to learn to challenge it. And sometimes I understand, y'all, it's easier just to let that stuff go unchallenged, because it does take some mental work to flip shit around. I know it does. I know it does. It takes a lot of mental work. And sometimes when I'm trying to like actively practice positivity, where I'm actively trying to say, let me try to say something good to myself, something nice to myself. Or let me try to think of a positive experience. You know, I'm really into using the power of the brain. I'm very much into neuroscience. Like, how can we leverage the power of the brain to change our life? And a lot of these gurus out here will say, you know, you have to think a new thought every day. Most people never think a new thought. Every day they wake up and think the same thoughts over and over again, then wonder why their life doesn't change. If you really want to change your life, you do have to think a new thought every day. You have to embrace a new thing. That's how your brain makes new neural connections, right? So I've been trying to do that. Think a new thought every day. Think something nice about myself that I haven't thought the day before. And sometimes I'll sit there and I'll be like, oh my God, this is so much work. Like, I've already told myself, I'm kind, you're pretty, you're nice, you're courageous, you're brave, you're resilient, you're a wonderful person. You deserve love. You deserve care. You deserve concern. You deserve success. You deserve abundance. You know, like I'm saying all these nice things to myself. And then I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's nothing nice in the world left to say to myself. And that's just not true. That's just not true. But what I'm saying to y'all is I understand how hard it is and how challenging it is to get to that place. Like, oh my God, how can I keep thinking a new thought every day? This is exhausting. It really is tiring, but I still want to challenge you to do it. I truly believe if we work on shedding old things, not just stuff, which is important, not just decluttering, but getting all of the shit out of our mind, figuring out what we need to do to shed some of these generational inequalities, I truly believe we can get back to our joy. All right, let's move on to part 2. Is it time to quit, leave, or stop? Trying to decide when it's time to shed. Y'all, let me just say, it is so hot in here. I did not expect it to be so warm today, and I am sweating. So there you have it. Okay, so y'all, part 2, we're talking about when is it time to quit, give up, leave, or stop when you're shedding. Y'all, this is a hard one because I'm a notorious latcher. I just latch onto people, latch on a situation, latch onto ideas. I'm one of those obsessive types. You know, my attachment style is anxious. So this is a hard one for me. It's hard, okay? It's hard. I really just have a hard time letting go. Even when their situation is pretty damn clear that it's time for me to let go and shed a circumstance, sometimes I have a really hard time. And then on the flip side, sometimes I be ready to let stuff go and it's kind of risky. So, yeah, I want to talk about that whole idea and like what are some questions and things that we can deduce when is it time to let go. One of the things that I have decided to do when I'm thinking about shedding something, that could be a relationship, a dating situation, a relationship with a woman. And I don't mean I date women. I mean like my friendships with my girlies, whether that's a situation, a job, or even if I'm at a party, you know. Like, when is it time to go? But I mean, really asking yourself when it's time to go about these bigger situations in life. So there's some questions that I plugged into AI that I actually thought were pretty good that it churned out. Some of these are questions I actually already ask myself. So I'm like, okay, AI. But the first one is the most obvious is what is your intuition telling you? And y'all, this is my one piece of advice that has been life-saving for me that I want to tell you. You can lie to other people, but do not lie to yourself. Do not lie to yourself. A lot of times we know what our intuition is telling us and we just don't want to hear it. We know what our intuition is telling us and we don't want to listen to it, be obedient to it, follow it, because the little demon on our left shoulder is really talking to the angel on our shoulder that hears our intuition and is really like, bitch, shut the fuck up. And our angel's like, but I know what I'm saying. And the demon is like, shut the fuck up. That was maybe the worst example I've ever given, ever. But you know what? We're going to roll with it. Nah, but for real. There have been times in my life where, yeah, I saw red flags, but I kept going. It wasn't because I didn't see the red flags. It was because I knew what my intuition was telling me and I didn't listen. All things considered, y'all, if you're a trauma survivor like me, sometimes intuition can be a very sneaky little thing to deduce, because here's the thing. When you're in trauma, if you've endured domestic violence, you know that your body is always activated. Your body is always activated. When I was going through trauma, especially when I was in my narcissistically abusive marriage, my body was activated from 2016 to late 2021. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That's 5 years. My body was in a constant state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn for 5 years. Okay. That's part of the reason why I was so goddamn confused, because I had high levels of cognitive dissonance, high levels of trauma bonding, high levels of addiction to abuse cycles. And it's really hard for your intuition to get a clear voice through all of that. And so when you're in trauma, I'm not directly talking to people who are in trauma. I'm talking about those of us who are kind of a little bit out from some things and we're trying to figure out what our body's telling us. One of the things that my therapist really helped me to figure out when I was recovering from that marriage was get back in touch with your body, get back in touch with what your body's doing. I remember my therapist, my most current therapist, I remember him telling me, what is your body saying to you? When he first started saying it to me, I was like, I don't know. I do not know what the fuck my body is saying to me. What the fuck are you talking about? Because it just was, what I was used to when I was in that situation was so traumatizing. My body hurt all the time. It just hurt all the fucking time. Everything hurt. That's the only way I could describe it to people. Like, I don't know how to explain to you what's happening to me, just that everything hurts all of the time. From my toes to my head, it just hurts to be alive. My brain hurts, my eyes hurt, my boobs hurt, my brain hurts, my eyes hurt, my fingers hurt. It hurts to sit, it hurts to breathe, it hurts to lay down. And what I realized later is that the brain can't differentiate between physical pain and emotional pain. So when you're being narcissistically abused and emotionally abused, especially at that level, at a heightened level, your body is reading it like physical pain. So everything just hurt. And so when I was coming out of that marriage and my therapist kept telling me, what does your body say? Like when you're in this situation, when you're in this situation, when you're trying to calm down, because he was really trying to help me through complex PTSD. I was having huge, significant PTSD triggers all the time, everywhere I went. Everything was fucking scaring the life out of me. And I remember him saying, what's your body saying? And I was like, I don't fucking know. My body just still fucking hurts all the time. Everything fucking hurts. And it was just so frustrating because he kept saying that and he kept saying that and he kept saying that. And it wasn't until, God, I don't even know. I think it was like maybe 2022. So it was like a couple years out from being divorced but still co-parenting with my ex that I was finally able to start feeling my body again, because it had gotten to a place of like relative peace again. It had like calmed down enough. I had done so much work. I had done EMDR. I had done all of this work to try to work through all of this trauma. And I had went heavy. I had went heavy, heavy, heavy into meditation, trying to get my body to fucking calm down, because complex PTSD is no fucking joke. My body was just like, you could go like that to me and I'd be like, screaming, going crazy. I still do that. The other day I was in my room at my makeup table and my son opened the door and said, "Mama," and I screamed, because I'm still very, very triggered and very startled very easily. It's literally ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But anyway, it took me so long to figure out what my body was saying to me. And so I want to put that out there, like just as a message of grace to those of you who aren't used to thinking like that. And now it's at a point where like my body is very hyper aware. Now, that's also called hypervigilance. It is also a side effect for abuse survivors of complex PTSD. However, I do think that it's better to have a little bit of hypervigilance than no hypervigilance at all, and you're just constantly getting to situations where you're going to be harmed and or abused and or assaulted because you literally are operating from a fucked up nervous system that can't differentiate between a bear being in the room and a rapist. Like it's not cool. So I'm okay with me being at a point where I'm hypervigilant, but now what it looks like is I can sit down on a date. I've been on a lot of dates in the last few years, trying to be out here and trying to figure out what I like and just get to know men and take it slow and, just one day hopeful, like maybe I can be in a healthy, really beautiful long-term partnership again. Although that hope is waning very quickly. But anyway, but now I can be at a date and my body will just tell me right away, like, this is not a safe person. And he could be doing all of the right things, saying the right things, doing the right things. And my body will just tell me. There's times where I haven't even sat down on dates. There's a few men who are really mad at me right now because we were talking and things were going well and we were planning on meeting, but my body was just feeling too discombobulated when I was talking to and there were things that they were doing that were definitely giving red flags, and it's very easy for me to be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, and them to be like, well, why? I want to know what I do and all this stuff, and I'm like, no, I trust my intuition. And yeah, there was a guy who went off on me for that. Like, he was like, you trust your intuition. He just was really, really mad. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I could have told him exactly step by step, here's what you did that I didn't like, and he might have been like, well, that's not a big deal. Well, not to you, but to me, I listen to my body and it's literally never wrong. It's never wrong. It has had 100% accuracy. And the times that I have been wounded or harmed are when I didn't listen. So sis, what I'm trying to tell you is, if you're at a place where you're in so much pain and you're still recovering from trauma, or you're in trauma, or you've had recent trauma and you can't literally figure out what your body is saying, first of all, you got to get to a therapist and figure out how to calm your nervous system the fuck down, number one. But getting to a place where you know what's going on in your body at all times is the biggest gift that my therapist gave me. I'm so happy. I'm just so happy that he was like, Grace, let's figure this out, because you need to know moving forward what your body's telling you. This is what was robbed from you as a child when you were sexualized. This is what has been robbed from you as an adult when you've been assaulted. And this is what was robbed from you in your marriage, where someone, literally what a narcissistically abusive marriage is someone treating you terribly. Like, let's say stabbing you in the arm and you're saying, ow, that hurts. You're stabbing me in the arm. It's bleeding. And them saying, no, it's not. What are you talking about? I didn't do that. You did that to yourself. Plus, it doesn't even hurt. That's a stab wound. That shouldn't even hurt you. And so it produces a very high level of cognitive dissonance. And that all of those things lead to you not feeling like you have agency in or of or around your body, your own body. This body is all we got, y'all. It's all we have, and it's a messenger. It not only encases our soul and who we are and everything we have and our ability to live and breathe and love and give and grow, but it is also The only indicator that we have that we are in danger, we're not in safe company. So I just want to emphasize over and over and over again how important it is to listen to your body, to get in touch with what your intuition is telling you, because your intuition will tell you whether you need to go, whether you need to leave something, whether you need to quit something, whether you need to stop something or someone. It really is a very, very important tool in a survivor's tool belt. And it's something that I wish I had learned so much younger. I could have saved myself from so much pain. And now sometimes it's kind of a drag, to be honest with you, because I feel like, oh God, I don't get to do anything fun because I know right away, you know. But there is a situation right now that is a dating situation that I feel like my intuition was telling me one thing, but over time it's kind of changed. And I feel like I need to move differently. And it kind of sucks. It honestly kind of sucks because in the past, I don't think my body would be warning me. I don't think my body would be giving me this kind of resistance or telling me. I don't think my intuition would be able to kind of kick in, but it is. And that, it's hard. It really, honestly, really sucks. All right, let's move on to part 3, letting go of control. You know, a lot of people have a hard time letting go of control. Letting go of control is a big part of just actually literally enjoying life. I have a really hard time letting go of control in areas. This is a way that we don't tend to think about it, but when you have an anxious attachment, when you have abandonment wounds, let's just say that when you have abandonment wounds, sometimes it can produce anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, secure attachment, etc. You know, I'm moving towards trying to be a securely attached person. But with abandonment wounds, what it does is it means you try to control people around you to get them to love you. It means you try to get people to stay. It means you try to maneuver situations. It means you try to become something so that someone will want you or accept you. Or it means that you try to like heavily control the amount of money you make, or heavily control areas of life that aren't meant to be held so tightly. And if you've done this before, you know what I'm talking about, because you will find that if you're a person that needs to feel control in these areas, that you will lose people and lose opportunities because you're trying so hard to control communication with those people. You're trying so hard to control those relationships. You're trying so hard to control a career or whatever that you actually lose them because you start acting like a fucking weirdo. And the only reason I know that is because I've done this. I've been the fucking weirdo. Okay, so like I know what I'm talking about. It's totally completely embarrassing because you come off as kind of like a desperate pick me, even though you know like that's not who you are and like what you're trying to do. You might even recognize like, yo, I got abandonment wounds. Okay, I'm trying to deal with an attachment style that keeps me up at night with anxiety, but you know, it's not always a good way to introduce yourself. Like, hey, yo, what's up? I'm Grace. I got attachment shit. What's your number, boo? You know, I don't tend to lead with that, but there we have it. All that said, when I have learned, and I'm still learning, to release control and to just actually sit with the feelings of I can't control this. I cannot control, you know, this job, how much money I make at this job. I cannot control, or nor should I try to control this person or this relationship or whatever. Once you learn that, it does actually reduce stress, which is something that trying to control something gives you. It also fosters acceptance in you. Radical acceptance is a huge part of healing, particularly for trauma survivors. It also fosters flexibility. Like flexibility is one of the number one precursors for successful anything or anyone, successful relationship, successful career, successful anything. You have to be flexible. It's like one of the number one traits when people study all of the most successful people in the world, no matter what the occupation, they're flexible. And so if you can learn to let go of control, you become a more flexible person. But if you're out here like me acting a hot fool, trying to control everybody and everything, you are not being flexible and thus not successful in what you're trying to be successful in. Learning to let go also helps you reduce unhelpful expectations of a situation that you think you can maneuver maniacally to get to a certain direction or a certain thing. This has been really hard on me, y'all. This is hard on me. Okay. So I'm not saying this from a like, I got this, y'all. I'm telling you that this is something I continue to learn. One of the ways that I have learned to let go of control is there's two. One is mindfulness meditation, just learning to take literally the thing, person, circumstance, whatever I'm trying to control, and start meditating about it. For me, that looks like I use a lot of guided meditations. I use the Amvana app. I use a lot of YouTube meditations as well. And I try to sit and dwell on the thing or topic. But I also really, really, really try to sit with the emotions that the thing I'm trying to control brings up for me. So, for example, the biggest area where I struggle with this is with this abandonment shit, y'all. This abandonment shit, so the death of me. So when I start attaching in a dating situation, if it's a man I really care for, really like, or I really want to have communication with, I start feeling like heavy anxiety if I sense a shift in the connection, which as an empath, as someone who's hypervigilant, I tend to notice really quickly. And especially if we're not physically in each other's presence a lot, which is really hard for me and men I date, because we're older, we have kids, and we just can't be around each other every day like when we was 18. And when you're a younger person than me with no children, and you're dating people with no children, it's just easier to see each other. But when you're 47 and you're dating 44-year-olds or 45-year-olds, and we all have 2 kids or 3 kids, and we all co-parent with exes, it's really difficult, like literally, to meet people in your own city, state even. And so a lot of the people I talk to are either 1 hour or 2 hours drive or 1 or 2 hours flight away. Not even kidding. It's that bad. So not being in their physical presence a lot can create a lot of abandonment shit for me, a lot of anxiety. And so what I have to do is, when I'm feeling like, oh, I think he's pulling away, I start feeling anxious, I have to literally sit in that emotion and then follow it. This is something my therapist helped me to do. So, okay, what if there was one time I was like, I was telling my therapist this and this and this and that happened. This was a few years ago. And he was like, so what did that make you feel? And I was like, it made me scared. Like, what if he doesn't want to be with me anymore? What if he's wants to break up with me or whatever? And he was like, and then what? And I was like, and then I would be devastated. And he was like, and then what? And then I was like, and I would be so sad. And, and he was like, and then what? And I was like, I would never get over it, and he just kept going. And then what? And then what? And then we just realized, literally, when you keep going, that life goes on. And actually, that is what happened with the guy I was telling him about. That guy did end up cheating on me, and he did end up breaking up with me, and I was devastated. And then I cried, and then I got over it, and then life went on. I was so worried and scared about that happening that it was giving me so much anxiety. Then it happened. Go figure. I have learned that in other situations, I haven't had anyone else but one person give me that much anxiety since him. And it was actually just pretty recently. And I had to do the and then what activity with myself. Like, okay, if he's pulling away, and then what? Then maybe he's not interested in me anymore. And then what? And really what the truth is, life has went on. Life has went on. And that man and no man is the savior of my soul. Okay, that's only Jesus. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Those kind of fears, they're big and they're real, even though I'm saying it doesn't matter. They're big, they're real, they're meaningful to me. They're producing a lot of shit in my body, especially in my stomach area. My whole gut is freaking the fuck out when I'm having an attachment. And I want to control. Like, the first desire is like, I want to try to control this. I want to do whatever I can to get this to happen or get this to happen. And what I've realized is, you just got to sit in it, y'all. You just got to sit in it. You got to sit with the fears. You got to practice your and then what exercise. And finally, let's do number 4. So shedding is about shedding that lining. Every month us women, we shed the lining, and it basically means we ain't pregnant. But once we shed it, the ovulation time comes in a couple weeks, and then we can get pregnant. I don't even know why that example came to me, but I just really wanted to talk about giving birth, because the idea of giving birth to a new person, a new you, a new way of thinking, a new mindset, because I have had 2 dreams now in the past month or 2. And also my dreams aren't a huge thing where I'm like, oh my God, I dreamt this and then this happened. Some people have those prophetic dreams. I've had a few, but these aren't the ones I'm talking about. But I have had a couple of dreams lately that I was giving birth. Let me just say, I'm 47. I have an IUD. I practice safe sex, and I'm not having nobody's baby. Okay. So ever again, for the rest of my life, I will not give birth ever again. So that is not in my plans. But I've had a couple dreams lately where I've been giving birth twice. I've had 2 dreams in the past month and a half, maybe 2 months, about giving birth, and it's just kind of been on my mind, and I've been thinking, praying, seeking God, journaling, meditating, like, God, what is it that you want me to do with this one life of mine at this point? At this point, at this trajectory, with where I'm at right now, how can I continue to deal with my many neurodivergent issues that I'm dealing with? How can I continue to deal with all of that and raise my children and provide for myself and be healthy? And like, what do you need me to do to survive and to thrive? Because I'm clearly out here struggling. Okay, God, can you tell me? So just the fact that I've had these couple of dreams in the last year, I've had a dream of really making this podcast very successful and a part of my way of living, a way to provide for myself. I'm still very much in the beginning. This is only the 11th episode. I know some people have hundreds of episodes before they're able to monetize a podcast, but I have had that dream, as well as growing my YouTube channel just in general. And so I have been asking God, like, is this what you want me to birth? Is this something that you want me to birth? And I felt very much in that direction, like, yes. But I wanted to be open to other things. Are there other things that you want me to birth? Are there things in your life that you need to birth? Just by way of you listening to this, it makes me feel like maybe God is speaking to you too. Are there things you need to birth? Like babies, ideas, projects, new careers, initiatives, movements, a new relationship, dating, new ways of thinking, new worldviews? Are there things in your life that you need to birth that you've been too afraid to birth? And you know what they say, when you don't have a plan, that is your plan. This is another area that I think it's really important to realize. If you don't have any idea of where you're going, you're not in control in any way. And I really do believe in the idea that we co-create our life with Creator, with God, with the source. I believe that we co-create the life that we want. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of put that out there as a feeler. Please let me know in the comments on YouTube or over on Spotify if that's something that you are considering. Is there anything in your life that you need to birth? Thank you so much if you got this far. Please don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to this, on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave me a review or rating on Apple Podcasts if you would. Follow me on all of the socials. My links are in all of the things. And to end it off like I usually do, what is one thing that you learned from this episode? I would love to know. Send me an email at grace@outheretryingtosurvive and let me know what you learned or what you're thinking. Put it in the comments and interact with me. And finally, this is a new thing. I created a group for those of us who love and listen to this podcast over on Facebook, for just us to interact with each other. You guys can give me show notes. You can give me feedbacks. You can give me ideas. I will put the link in the show notes. Please join us on Facebook, and I will see you then. Thanks so much for listening.